What is the line between genius and insanity? And why does a genius have a proclivity to become more insane? Why is there a higher probability of going insane if you are a genius? So, first of all, we'll start with a model of reality. And all models start out with the one. There's only one one. There's only one all that is. There's only one reality. But there are many models of reality. We'll do this over here since it seems to give a little bit more space. So there are many, there are in fact infinite models of reality, but there's only one reality. And we're not in reality as we perceive it through the conscious mind. We're in a model or simulation of reality. And the reason for that is processing capacity, meaning your and my brain is so slow and so small in its relationship with all that is that we could literally spend 1,000 years verbally articulating the movement of subatomic particles in reality in just half a finger. Meaning there is so much activity moving so quickly at a subatomic level in just this finger. And words are so slow, and with them thoughts, that we could talk about this subatomic particle moved 30 degrees to the left, then it did this, then it moved 30 degrees to the right, then it moved here within this atomic structure. But it had moved so many thousand times in the time that we took to say that it moved 30 degrees to the left, that we would never catch up. Meaning we cannot consciously perceive reality at a subatomic level, even in something this small. There is more activity happening faster than thought in a pen or a pencil than we could ever catch up with an eternity of words. Reality is too big, it's too fast for us to directly experience it and be able to put it into thought, to make it conscious through language. So what we do, what we've always done as human beings, is we form cults or cultures. And what these do is they take the undifferentiated whole, the infinite one, and they dumb it down a bit. They create a model, right? Now, this we can track, right? We say this is 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 elements, we might say. But why not 5, right? The Chinese say there are 5 elements. Or 6 elements, right? Or 32 elements, right? Why not? Right? Why not an infinite number of elements? Or we say there's a heart, a mind, and a body. We break the totality of the human experience, which is infinite, down into a few simple categories that we can be conscious of. We're not conscious of the entirety of the heart, mind, and body. We're not even conscious of the atomic movement of a single finger for a single moment. But we are conscious of our dumbed down version of that. the words, right? Because that's all they are. They're not a heart, right? Because a heart has more subatomic particles on just this physical dimension than we could ever keep up with. But we can say the word heart. We can't say the words and keep up with the movement of 10 trillion, trillion, trillion movements in a single minute, right? We never keep up with that, right? We can just say that in the most abstract sense. So we are in a simulation, and the simulation is language at a level of abstraction that allows us to capture vast amounts of energy movement in a crude enough pattern that we appear to keep up with reality. And it works like this. So there's 10 trillion, 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 trillion things going on all the time, all around us, on any number of levels, right? We break up the colors into crude, red and green and blue, etc. But that's just for us. It's not real. We look at this and we say that's a maroonish hat. Fine. We can keep up with reality at that level of simplicity, at that level of abstraction. But by the time we look at the subatomic particles of this, by the time we look at maybe 200 million variations of red, that is limited only to the distinction capacity of the lens. Right? If we look at it in a microscope, we find that the dye that was used wasn't consistent. It just appears to be monochrome, but it's not, right? There's infinite variation. So the world is as big as the lens through which we can perceive it. And our lens is a very, very small lens. And so we like simple things. For example, why not break things down in true measurements to their 1,000th decimal point, right? Because true measurements, at least 1,000 decimal points, it's not one, this isn't a 1-inch thing, it's a 1.0002000. Why not break it down to the size it really is, to 1,000 decimal points? Well, the trouble is the human mind can't grasp something, numbers more than, about 20, right? If we do our best to memorize what we're dealing with, we might be able to remember, to reassemble a number that had 20 digits, right? I can't do it. I have to, what's that spare cell phone's number? Is it 84 or 47? I can never remember that. That's a 10-digit number that I've had for years, and that escapes me, right? It escapes me, right? A 10-digit number. But in reality, we start measuring smaller and smaller increments. Each measurement is an infinite number of numbers. So you're rounding up or you're rounding down to your system, right? If you use a millimeter, you're dealing in thousands. So you round up or down to the nearest millimeter, and that's plenty for us. It's just not real. It's not the real measurement. It's the system that we're using. If we're using inches, maybe we round up and down to the 16th of an inch or the 32nd of an inch, or 1/8 of an inch, or just the inch, right? That's about an inch, right? It depends what we're doing, right? So we're dealing with crude, abstract models of reality that we are overlaying on reality, none of which are real. They're all models, and they're all approximate. They're models, they're not real, and they're approximate models. And the simpler the model, the more approximate it is, right? If you want to reduce the entire color spectrum down to black and white, pretty simple, pretty crude. It's not real, it never was, but it's also pretty dumbed down. There's the good guys and the bad guys. There's up and there's down and nothing in between, right? Is it this one or this one? I want to know. And that's what we want to know, right? But reality is the infinite number of possible distinctions in between. And it is infinite, right? Because you can take a little bit of space, you can cut it in half, and 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 you can keep cutting with no end in sight, other than the limitations of your observing and measuring device, right? We haven't found an end. Now, we like to think we have, right? 100 years ago, there were a body of very respected scientists, physicists, inventors, said all the main inventions have been made. The steam engine, electricity, the telephone. There's nothing really left to discover. And here we are, right? Throughout every time in history, there have been groups of people who have said, we've seen it all, right? We are all that is. This is it. But it never is, right? It never is. Give us enough time, and we discover how little we knew about all that we knew so little about, right? Reality is really, really big. Our models of reality are very, very small. And if you pay attention, you will notice that the vast amount of area in reality is between the points in the model, right? So we say, for example, heart, mind, and body, right? So those are 3 points. Heart, mind, and body, those are 3 points. How big are those points in relationship with the whole, with the totality of the sphere? They're almost nothing, right? Most of what's going on is going on between the 2 points. Whatever they are, whatever the model is a dumbed down version of the one, of the whole, of the sphere. The model is a simplistic simulation of something far more complex. So you take something that might be a trillion times bigger, and you reduce it to 3 points that you can grasp: heart, mind, and body, right? But in those words, you're not really understanding, you're not feeling in that moment the full range of possibility, of probability, of actuality between those words. Right? All that's going on between the heart and the mind and the body, very quickly overwhelms our processing capacity, right? So there's a tension between the complexity of reality and our overwhelming resistance to it, and the crudeness of our system. Whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter what our system is, it's crude, right? five-pointed system, this system, right? This system, right? It's us or it's them system, right? Binary system. You can divide reality, as long as we don't get into the millions, we're usually okay. I like a 7-point system. Why? Well, it's kind of at my limit, isn't it, right? There's the work-life balance. That's a binary system. There's work and there's life. I thought you were alive when you're at work. Well, there's work and everything else. It's a pretty simple system. Right? But, a 7-point system, I do these things, I do these. It's starting to get complex. Like, what should I do next in my 7-point system? I want something simple. The simpler it is, the less real it is, the more dumbed down the model is. And of course, when we're trying to engage with reality using a simple model of reality, there's going to be conflict, right? Is this the heart or the mind? Well, it must be the mind because you just asked that question. That's a thought. But where's the thought taking place? It's taking place in your body. It's producing a feeling, a sensation, an emotion. Where's the emotion? Isn't that in the body, right? It's confusing, right? So we like to lay out models of reality, but none of them work all of the time. The best investors will tell you that the best of the best are not always right. That no one can fully time the market. The best of the best are just right more of the time than the worst of the worst. And so they have a more accurate model of reality. Reality is the market. This is what it's doing. Well, the best of the best have a model of the market that predicts the market more times than not. And that's the best of the best, right? They have a model of the economy that allows them to see more of what's likely to happen than other people do, more of the time. No one is the market. No one infallibly sees the market because the market is too complex to be fully seen. Right? There's Mrs. Winnebago over in Chile doing something right now that's affecting the market a very tiny amount. And who knew that her computer just, finally went online, and so she's going to buy 100 million shares of this. She's been wanting to do it for, 6 weeks. And now her computer is fixed. And so she's going to go online and do that. Who knew, right? Nobody has a model that can predict that and all the other things that are simultaneously going on that create probability fields. And that's the best we can interact with is probability fields. And if you understand the probabilities most of the time, then you can make more intelligent bets that over time, using a certain model will work within a given period, right? Because that also changes, right? The model that works when the Dutch guilder is at its prime may not work when the British pound is at its prime. Right? In the rise and fall of empires, as outlined in Ray Dalio's research on changing world orders. Right? What works when one world order is in effect may not work when another is in effect. So we have models of reality. And they're not real. And a genius penetrates the model, right? So it's heart, mind, and body. That's good enough for most people. I have a heart, I have a mind, I have a body. Well, can you have a mind without a body? Well, I don't really know about that. Can you have a body without a heart? I don't really know about that. Is the physical heart the source of the feelings? I don't really know about that, right? Well, what do you know? I know that there's a model of reality that says I have a heart, I have a mind, I have a body, and they're separate. But are they? Are they really separate? Well, the model says they're separate. Well, if you drug yourself up with alcohol or some other substance, does it affect your mind and your feelings? If you don't get any exercise, do you feel good? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I don't like jogging, so I don't know, right? So most people are comfortable, right? Most cults provide simple models of reality, right? Capitalism, communism, the right way, the only way, democracy, totalitarian states, dictatorships, this way is better than this way, and this is the way it is, right? But the models don't work, right? Communism didn't work, right? It's never worked. Capitalism doesn't work, right? You want people to be healthy, successful, etc., right? How does shipping jobs overseas and leaving villages unemployed, how is that leaving them happy, right? Oh, it doesn't work for them. It works for overall, the majority. It works most of the time, right? And that's about all you can say. It works better than this other thing most of the time, but it doesn't work very well. It's a model of what's supposed to work, but doesn't, right? Dictatorship, that's bad. Monarchies, they're bad. But what about this king, right? What about the king of Bhutan who insisted on transitioning to democracy? And they all wanted a king. They didn't want a democracy. So he said, listen to me. I'm telling you what to do. We're having a democracy. And so they listened to the king. They wanted a king. They listened to a king. They got a democracy. Right? If they'd all voted, they'd have voted for a king. Right? So what about good kings? Benevolent dictators that for a period of time create wealth and prosperity better than corrupt political leaders of democracies. What about that, right? Well, we just say that most of the time, most dictators are rotten, and so dictators are bad. But not all of them are. And we say that politicians, democratic elected politicians, are good, even though they lie and steal and take bribes to get elected. Oh, that's good most of the time. It's better than a dictatorship, right? So we have models that aren't real and that never work all of the time in all situations with all people. they work some of the time, to some degree, in some situations. And so we have models, and they're all different. There have been 10,000 cults in human history. There have been 10,000 cultures in human history. And a cult is just a platform, a network of people that agree on a set of protocols. This is our protocol. If you want to be part of our network, here's what you say, here's what you do, here's what you think, here's what you feel. But what happens when someone falls in love with something that doesn't fit in the system? When someone falls in love with the beauty, truth, and goodness that lies outside of the system, and it's more beautiful, it's more good, it's more true, it's more right than anything they've ever seen that's right. What happens when they touch an unspeakable beauty, an ineffable sense of rightness that's outside of the system, the status quo, the model of reality? What happens? Well, all cults, all cultures in human history demand conformity. What they basically say is reality is too big for us to deal with in its vast complexity, so we all agree that we're going to say that these are the good guys and these are the bad guys, and this is what should happen and this is what isn't. We all agree that, and we get along harmoniously as long as we all agree to say the same thing and do the same thing. But it doesn't include the lover from another religion that's more true, that's more good, that's more beautiful than anything that we've experienced in our religion. Right? This is true, this is good, this is beautiful. And it's outside the set, it's outside the box of the cult. So one of the sources of genius is love. To acknowledge the relationship, the relay of energy with that which is outside of the system. Another can be hate, right? To acknowledge the malevolence, the hostility, the ugliness of that which is not acknowledged in the system, but is a part that's influencing the system. Right? So every cult offers a certain amount of immunity, protection, and defense for its own, right? An American citizen gets caught by Iranian terrorists. Well, as long as they have the passport, as long as they speak English, as long as they obey these laws and do this, well, then we've got to go and get them. We've got to rescue them, right? Why we don't rescue our own homeless people, another matter, right? That's another system, right? Once they've been rescued with tens or twenties or hundreds of millions of dollars and secret deals and all this, then we can bring them back where they can be homeless, and, well, that's also part of the system, right? Because you're supposed to work hard and do this, and if you don't, well, that's the system. You get to be homeless and an addict, and that's our system too, right? So we fight for that, right? We're not going to, so we might spend $100 million rescuing someone in a covert terrorist rescue operation, and then just put them on the streets. After that protocol has been satisfied, I'm traumatized, I need $100,000 of therapy, and then I need $200,000 to start a business. Yeah, no. We spent $100 million to rescue you, but we're not going to spend $300,000 to help rehabilitate you. It's not what we do, right? Our system says it's up to the individual to do that. So do it. Well, it doesn't work. So growing number of people on the street, well, that's our system. Take it or leave it, right? We'll spend $100 million to rescue you. We'll spend $100,000 a year to lock you up in prison. But we won't spend a penny to help you resolve childhood trauma or do a number of other things that work better but don't fit the model. So every cult is a network of people that adopt a certain model that is quite simply insane, right? It falls apart with the slightest scrutiny. It's absurd, right? And the people that tend to question a model of reality tend to be disserved by it. Why, right? Because sugar is a form of sleep, right? Because as long as everyone is saying just do this and it feels good, and they say don't ask questions and do this and it feels good, as long as you can go round the system and it feels pretty good, why make the effort to question, to upset everyone? Why? Why make the effort to upset everyone if it just seems to be working, at least for you? And the answer is you don't, right? Most people, most of the time, when and where the system is working, the model of reality is adequate. They don't have an incentive to go into the unknown, to reinvent a model, to break the model, to explore the model's limits, because it upsets people, right? It's always irritating. People say, we've all agreed on this, right? And then somebody says, no, we haven't agreed on that at all. Oh, gosh. Just shut them up. Get them out of here. We've all agreed on this, right? Okay, good. Now, this is what we're going to do about it. Can we agree on that? That's our model, right? People are dying. We're going to have seat belts, right? The car companies for some time said that seat belts were too expensive. Nobody needed them. Complete waste of time. And then the law is passed, and we're going to have seat belts because most of the time, more people will stay alive with a seat belt than not. But it's not perfect. It's not perfect. Right? Hard to have a blowjob wearing a seat belt, right? It's not perfect, right? But we've decided that keeping people alive is more important than whether or not blowjobs are reduced or expanded in moving vehicles. Right? Based on what, right? Well, keeping people alive, right? So that they can have blowjobs at home if they want to, without talking about it, because we've decided in our cult not to talk about sex. We use innuendo to, in every possible way, talk about sex without talking about sex. Why? Well, we don't really have a reason for that. It's just because. Because we've decided that thought is noble, and right and dignified and manly. And people don't think when they're having sex, so it's undignified, it's unmanly, right? They're out of control, they're dependent on women, right? So as chauvinists, we don't acknowledge the moments when we're out of control, when we lose ourselves in the transcendent identity of orgasm. It just ruins the whole thing. So let's just pretend in our cult that sex doesn't happen. and we'll do it with innuendo, right? With a perfectly straight face, we'll say, well, things are all right in that department. And that's all I care to say about the matter. Sounds very dignified. I'm in control. I have boundaries, I have propriety, my privacy. I'm a rational, righteous man doing things in an orderly fashion, right? We've decided those are good things, right? Because they're masculine. And we've decided that feminine things like spontaneity, like joy, like ecstasy. What is ecstasy? It's out of the stasis. It's out of the system. It's transcendent as a moment. We've decided that that as do business with our bank. We are ecstatic. We spontaneously do various things different than our procedures. No. That's not. No. We have been in business since 1854, right? We do things the hard way. We always do this. We never smile. We never do a single spontaneous thing. Everything is done perfectly according to plan. Your money is safe, out of feminine hands, right? So order, discipline, precision, that's what I want. So, but what about the joyful moment? Oh, you see, no, that's not the way that we behave, right? People want to know, no matter what happens, right? This will stay the same. They want certainty, right? They want to bet on the high-ranking social values, right? So we have, obviously, a preference for masculine traits in a chauvinistic cult. And why a chauvinistic cult, right? Why not a feminine cult? Why a chauvinistic cult? Well, it kind of partly depends on heritage, right? We have more of a traditional cult where we look backwards than we look forward. We don't have a cult that looks forward as much as backwards. And there was a time in the last 1,000 years when, with all the warring tribes and this and that it was strong men who had better aim with their hands, who were better focusers, who were more sociopathic, single-minded focus on the objective. There were more men that went to war and died to protect their women. Well, what are they going to get for that, right? Rank, right? I'm going to die to protect you. If I'm going to use my bigger body to lug you out of a drowning situation, rush you out of a forest fire, get you out of a burning building, what am I going to get for risking my life to protect the tribe? Well, you get rank. They died an honorable death. They went to war. They did their job, right? So you got to get something, right? Nothing's free. There's no free lunch. Right? So, in that context, in that situation, that's the trade-off. You die for us, and you sacrifice for us, and you be in uncomfortable positions, and you get rank. You get to pretend that your traits are uniquely superior. And so you get rank, right? That's the bargain. Right? We're moving into a period where physical brawn is less and less relevant to well-being for both men and women. And so the rank system is being questioned, right? It's the way it is, right? A genius is not satisfied with the limitations of the simple, dumbed-down version of reality, right? Because a genius reaches out beyond the model of reality until they touch the edge of what is, what can be known. They leave the system. Sometimes a genius loves. Something that doesn't fit inside the box, and they reach out, they touch that which they love. And they refuse to give it up, to conform to the majority. And they're in the unknown, and they are invisible. What they are doing is invisible within the model, right? Right. Every model creates blinders, because every model of reality is fragile. It's very important to understand that every model of reality is fragile. I can create a model of heart, mind, and body. It's a lovely model, but it's fragile. Because, first of all, you have to believe that they're separate, that the heart is separate from the body and from the mind, and it isn't. They're inextricably connected. So that bit is fragile. But the other fragilities are, it's just so limited, right? There's past heart and future heart. There's your heart and there's my heart, right? So we can just keep going on and on. And then there's things like the gut, right? Is that your heart, your mind, or your body, right? Your gut instinct. Your stomach curls when you see something. Is that heart or mind or body? What's that? Right. And then that model that says that they're always connected, that doesn't always fit. Like, what about people having out-of-body experiences? They leave their body, they see things going on in the operating room that with their eyes closed. They hear certain things when they're under general anesthetic, and then out-of-body. So what's happening there, right? So the model, when I say that there is no heart without body, and there's no body without heart, that's another model, right? To say that they're connected, that's another model. But that's not true either, because what about these out-of-body experiences? Leaving the body and still having thoughts and feelings, even sensations. Astral body, for example. What about that? See, that ruins my model. And then what about people that say this and this and this, and then they had an astral body experience and they had a different one? Ruins it again, right? No model, nothing that can be put into words is adequate to live up to the full complexity of reality all of the time. It may be the best model available, in which case use it to take you closer to sustainable well-being. But it doesn't mean that it's real. It doesn't mean that it works all the time. It doesn't mean it'll take you all the way there. It'll just take you a little bit closer. And as far as models go, that's adequate, right? I'm simulating reality, but it's allowing me to navigate reality in a way that's getting a little bit closer. So a genius is someone who is pushing through the dumbed down model of reality. A genius is also in that transcending the model, is aware of all the different probable models, right, that could exist, right? A genius is present to the infinite. Right? There are an infinite number of models of reality. And every model of reality reveals something, brings something into focus that other models of reality do not. So the purpose of different models of reality is that they bring different things to consciousness because they use different language to divide reality, right? The undifferentiated whole, the one, is divided in different ways with language, mathematical language, that's a language, and verbal language. Right? So when we say what the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, when we say that, we've decided to divide the 1 into 10 and then repeat and then repeat. But that's just that mathematical language. What about zing guang ging gang gang gong gang gang ging gang 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 gang? 15. And then repeat. Why not divide the world into 15 units and have a 15-point number system, or a 13-point, or a 13.2-point number system? Well, every single pattern, that's what a language is a pattern, reveals, like if you do a 2-point number system, you land on different things than if you do a 3 or 4-point number system, and then repeat. So you land on different places on the infinite continuum based on how you divide it. Right? You take the 1, you decide how you're going to divide it. And if I divide it by 2, I land on this point on that continuum. If I divide it by 10.6, I land on different points. And the only thing that we're conscious of are the points. The words are the things. We're conscious of this. We're not conscious of the infinite whole that exists between. It's too big. So it's unconscious. The biggest parts of reality are unconscious because we lack the processing capacity to digest them, so we're unaware of them. That's reality. It's too big. So we go to the points in our model, in our version of reality. So every system reveals and highlights, emphasizes different parts of the system, of reality, and brings them to light and makes those real. And what doesn't come up isn't real because we're not aware of it, because it's not put into our language. So, if we divide the world and we say that, this is a hand and this is a forearm, it's not real, right? Why don't we say that the hand continues to hear? Because it needs blood supply, and if that blood supply wasn't exist, so it needs at least this amount of blood to be a hand. So the hand is to hear, or the hand is here because this hand requires stuff going on here to move. So, give me a break. If a hand is something that does this, and it can't do that if the arm is severed, then the hand is this, right? It's everything. We just make it up, right? We look at some pattern that's easy for us to grasp, and we say that the hand does, like this is kind of a long thing, long pointed thing, right? So that's an arm, and then this divides, and right where it divides, we'll call it a different word. But it's all a joke. Completely meaningless. It could be called a sand, a band, a bing, a bang. Any name will do, right? And you could measure the spaces in between the fingers and call that your body. Right? I am the one that is existing in between. Or this is defined by the angles of the space. I mean, no. We want to say I'm the points. I'm not the spaces, I'm the points. Right? Because that's more consistent with our habits around modeling reality. Well, a genius goes off into these places that other people do not go. And often that is precipitated by trauma, because trauma is a large energy pattern that collides with a small energy pattern in such a way as to shatter the identity, the I that identifies with a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. Now, someone who's traumatized, someone who's hit by a bus, their pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being is very different. If they leave their body and realize, there's part of me that leaves my body, maybe they certainly realize that there's a lot more than my habitual pattern. And it's often precipitated by trauma, because trauma is the phenomena of shattering an identity, a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, in an overwhelming way that leads the I, the ego, to get lost in something in the unknown, outside of the identity, outside of the pattern. And at the same time, this is terrifying and painful for the ego in many cases. And so at the same time, the logical conclusion is that if I got hit by a bus and lost my identity and now I'm out there, the obvious conclusion is the system isn't working perfectly, because it's a system that involves me getting hit by a bus and other people getting hit by a bus. So it's not working perfectly. So the loyalty deteriorates to the system by someone in enough trauma to dissociate from the system due to a series of traumatic events. The loyalty is shattered. I was told that work hard and do this, and it would all work out. But I did that. I went around in the system. I did this crappy job, and then I had this crappy relationship, and I ate this crappy food, and then I went to work again and did this, and, it was going along, right? And it was supposed to all be wonderful. And then I got hit by a bus, and people didn't say that all you have to do is work hard and do this, and you'll be hit by a bus. And then they didn't say that in this traumatized, terrified state that I would be surrounded by ignorant people that didn't understand trauma and that made it worse. They didn't give me a word, and I didn't understand what to do here. And I'm supposed to be cool, calm, and collected, but that's not working. It's not happening. But they're telling me it should work, but it isn't. The system is broken, right? And I don't care to maintain a system that induces this amount of incompetence and pain. So I'm not loyal to the dysfunctional system that isn't serving me any longer. And so I am dishonoring the system that is dishonoring me, right? I don't feel served in this moment, in this way, by this system, by this model of reality. It's not working. And that break with the system is synonymous with exploring the 99.9% of reality that isn't in the system. A system is less than 1% of reality. The spaces in between, the vast unknown, that's reality. And we go out there. Now, we need mirrors. We need other people to integrate, to reflect back certain things in order to bring it to awareness, to have sanity, to have integration. But by definition, when you leave a network of a cult or culture, when you leave a system, there aren't people out there. You're in the vastness of space, the 99.9% of the unknown unknown, without the full language to articulate it, and with no one there to listen and understand what you're attempting to articulate. And one of the phenomena of flotation, tanks, for example, where they make you completely unaware of the edges of your body because the water temperatures, when you got no feedback, when you got no light, you can't see a clock. This is one of the ways that psychological warfare is conducted, is they're trying to loosen your tether. Like this is what the U.S. government does in its black sites, right? Whether it's Guantanamo or, various private prisons around the world where contracts are. The goal is that whoever is identified as the enemy, the goal is to dissociate them from a familiar, from a family pattern, a familiar pattern that they are identified with, that they're repeating psychologically, physically. I do this, I say this for these reasons. It's a pattern, it's an identity. And so if I can keep you up all night, if I can lose track of time, if I can turn the light on at 3 a.m. and then off and keep you away from the sunlight and keep you away from your friends and keep you away from this, your identity will deteriorate because you'd lack support for the identity, for the pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being. And the idea is that with a weakened identity, you will be more compliant, more docile, and torture, etc., is part of encouraging that docility. And that's kind of the idea, right? That we're going to break your identity, and then we're going to get you to adopt our pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, or at least comply with our pattern. And people are frightened of insanity. What is insanity? It's not knowing the boundaries. It's not knowing the edges. It's not having language needed to navigate and articulate. It's not having a clear model. It's being in a timeless space in between points with no clear sense of how this bit relates to that bit. Where nobody can find you and you cannot find anyone else. You're in between systems, models of reality. You're in between language. Now this is ecstasy, it's ecstasis, but it's also dread, it's also horror, it's also, I will do anything not to be alone here. alone in the vast space where everything is so far away. Right? So the genius is going out of the box, often because of love, often because of caring, of curiosity, of caring enough to see, seeing enough to understand, understanding enough to empathize. They're going out there. And what they love, what they fall in love with, the beauty, truth, and goodness that they see out there is being denied. The brightest star is being denied, dishonored, violated, ignored, cut out by the system, by the network of people, their family, their cult or culture. Don't go out there is the only message. Why? This is so beautiful. This is so, no. It doesn't, no. The line is here. It goes from here to here. You're crazy. You're going outside the line. It's not what we do. It's not how it's done. The line is here. But the beauty is here. What I love is here. No, nothing good out there. Have a look. No, right? Galileo. Have a look through the telescope. See what you see. No, it's blasphemy. It's evil. It's to be damned. And you will be cursed. You will be cast out from your cult. You will be shamed. You will be killed. You will go unfunded. Everything that you love most will be spat upon, will be dishonored, be laughed at. Now, this is another influence, insanity. Do you want to return to a system that is so hostile to what you love that it breaks your heart to recognize, to perceive the cruelty in the status quo? Do you want to return and navigate within a system that in order to function, you must perceive your own flaw as viewed by the system? And you must dissociate from that which you hold most beautiful, good, and true, that no one wants to look at, and no one wants you looking at either. Right? What's your choice? To cut off the divine, to cut off what is most beautiful, good, and true, in order to satisfy the needs for security, survival, some sense of love and belonging and self-esteem? Or do you want to stay out there and dissociate from the morons who cannot see, who will not look through the telescope? The inner telescope, the outer telescope. Right? This is the choice of the genius. And some choose not to come back to a world that would dishonor what they love the most. Others lose touch because there's nothing to bounce off of. So they go unconscious, lacking a system of words to make sense of the transcendent experiences they're having. There's nothing to bounce off on. There's no tether to the known, to the rational. But it's so beautiful. So it's a boundless, it's an ungrounded beauty, truth, and goodness. If I could just touch this, right? And this is why love is another form of genius and another form of insanity. This moment is, if we could just run away, if we could just skip the religion in the world, right? This moment, this beauty is so profound. I don't want to deal with the stupidity of a cult that says this and the stupidity of a cult that says that, and your ungodly, horrible parents who trying to bribe you into fitting into this, and I don't want to do that. I just want nothing to do with that. I want to dissociate. I want to elope. I want to run away, right? And in older times, and still today in certain cultures, what happens when the couple is hunted down? In some situations, the woman is killed for dishonoring the cult, the family system, having a child out of wedlock, having an abortion, whatever, right? When you go from belonging to being hated by a cult that is too stupid and too rigid to see the beauty and the truth and the goodness that you see, some people go mad because trying to hold what is most sacred and most violated in the same moment is too big of a gap. It's not enough words to express the horror, the pain, the shame, the grief, the horror of having the Christ crucified inside by your own people, of having the Christ crucified by a mob that you are unable to stop. That which you find most beautiful, most true, most good is the deity that you aspire to, that you worship with your time, with your money. But when that is destroyed, when that is dishonored, why come back? What to do? What to do? And this is the crisis of a genius that becomes a genius out of love. Or another doorway into genius, because we're talking about moving out of the 1% of our limited model of reality into a taste of perhaps 5% of all that is, of transcending the model. Another doorway is to be sociopathic, right? Because most people are bound by empathy and the fear and anxiety of other people, of the unknown, to stay within their system. And so you can become sociopathic, where you realize, okay, you don't kill, you don't do that, you don't do that, but I've got a whole world open to me. You don't lie, you don't do this, but I can go wherever I want in the system. I can play any role, I can put on any act. I'm not bound by this system. I don't care about you. I care about nothing other than whatever my momentary agenda is. And so I'll be this in this moment, I'll be that another moment, I'll be this. I'll completely transcend the system. And the sociopathic genius also sees the limits of the system, right? The sociopath is not bound by law. But the police are. And the sociopath has disdain, disrespect for the stupidity. They waited for a warrant the damned fools. I would have killed him and got the job done. Right? So the sociopath is transcending the system, is revealing to the cult the flaws in the model, right? Because when you have a $1 trillion military outwitted by one cyber hacker, for example, it's a joke, isn't it? $10,000, one person outwitting an entire military? Because the military is a system, and the hacker is outside of it, right? It's the same dynamic when the United States declared independence, right? The system of military battle, according to the British, was you were supposed to have uniforms, you were supposed to have ranks, right? So the British would, organize all their troops, get all their uniforms ready, sound their bugles, blah, 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 right? But the American terrorists in little copse of trees wouldn't sound the bugle. They would just start shooting at the British, right? Just shooting them. They weren't playing by the rules. It was dreadful, right? Bum, 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 bum. We now declare war on the United States rebels. Come out and meet us in battle. Ping, 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 ping. Oh, so unfair, right? Here they were doing the decent thing, writing up, presenting the articles of war, and they were just getting shot by rebels who weren't honoring the king, right? It's terrible, right? But not to the Americans, right? This was practical innovation, right? This was outside the system that the British had designed to enslave them, right? So it's no different. It's no different when any terrorist trying to fight for their sense of beauty, truth, and goodness as they see it against insurmountable odds of their country or their coalition or an invading force, tries to pursue what is beautiful, true, and good as they see it. And with the methods available to them, the methods they think will work. Whether they work or not, right? It's the sociopath and the lover both transcend the system. The sociopath doesn't care about anyone else. And the system gets in their way half the time, so they just walk right through it. The lover cares about something beyond, because most systems are ugly. Most systems leave carnage. Most systems are crude. They kill, they maim. They're inefficient, they're dumb, right? But they're the system. So the lover of beauty, truth, and goodness also moves outside the system because it's more beautiful, it's more true. The poet is the one that breaks the rhythm of the language, right? I touched the taste of heart and beauty seen through the eyes of a star, right? The poet, unsatisfied with the model of reality constructed with normal language, reaches out into the ineffable and synesthetizes language, tastes the sounds, because it's more beautiful than pretending. that the senses are all separate, that we are separate. It's more true, it's more wonderful. And the poet doesn't want to get a job so they can get ahead in the system. They want to invite their friends and family out of the walls into the starlit night that they see through transcendent eyes. When that is rejected, when that is beaten down, when that is ignored for the mediocrity, the depression, the stupidity, and the cruelty of daily life, the poet doesn't want to return. The genius doesn't want to return. The sociopath sees no value in returning to a system that is so stupid that they have 1 to $1 trillion in leverage, right? Sociopath says, look, I've got nothing. I just did this and got what I wanted, and nobody could stop me. I'm not going to go back to that dumb system. It's pathetic, right? So, a system creates geniuses that transcend the system through trauma and through stupidity, right? Every system traumatizes its people in some way, cuts the world into irrational pieces in some way, and that creates violation, it creates trauma, it creates a sacrilege to what's beautiful, true, and good, a more perfect and beautiful world. That pain leads to disloyalty. The trauma leads to a shattering. And you have sociopathic genius and transcendent luminous genius emerging out of that. You have empathic, love-based genius. I want something better for myself and others. And when the genius is outside the boxes, the models of reality that others use, if they lose the tether entirely, if it's too painful to go back and use those reference points of where they came from, because the reference points are too ugly, the memories are too painful, you can get lost in the boundlessness, in the words that have no language, Jangan, Dangan, Dangan, but have more energy. It's fascinating how much ecstasy is outside the set. Did you notice that? Jangan, Jangan, Jangan. Where is that smile coming from? It hasn't been here the entire time inside the English language. But nonsense, which just means non-reference to the language used to define the senses. Nonsense touches it in 5 seconds. Isn't that what everyone wants? To feel sustainably better, to avoid feeling chronically worse. And when 5 seconds of nonsense achieves that more efficiently than an hour of cerebral discipline, how can the system compete with the joyful exuberance of what he is? With the chaos, the beauty, the truth, the enjoyment in the unknown.